Lore is typically the last thing you think of when discussing Minecraft. No NPCs in the game are keen to talk about what's happening, and no book will tell you its history. There is nothing except occasional ruined structures that can be found across the world, while the end poem basically just tells you to go touch grass. Despite this, it is becoming clear that there is something going on, even if we still have almost no clue what that something is. However, if you search far enough and dig deep enough, you may end up discovering something you were never meant to find. I've picked out a handful of different structures that best demonstrate what I'm talking about. Starting with the mundane and simple, we'll work our way up to the most important. Sorry, Desert Well, today is not your time to shine. The pyramids are an iconic part of Minecraft due to their age, valuable loot, and unique design. They are made of sandstone, terracotta, and even make use of redstone. Dunes will often cover them entirely, so I hope you like digging. The desert temples were added back in 1.3, and exist to give players a reason to go to the otherwise useless deserts. Little explains its purpose, as this was still back when Mojang did not care about world building. Regardless, we can still pick apart a few details, most notably a very recognizable face chiseled into certain parts of the pyramid next to some hieroglyphics. Whoever originally built these not only knew about creepers, but also considered them important enough to be emblazoned on their greatest buildings. Perhaps they were worshipped and gave the inhabitants an admiration for explosives. Or instead it could be a warning. What if there was a period when creepers were far more prevalent? Digging down, the abandoned mineshafts are usually the first sign to new adventurers that there's more to be found in the underworld than just caves. They consist of maze-like pathways mined out at some point in the past, and can be terrifying to make your way through. It's dimly lit by torches, with dozens of forks and endless spots for mobs to hide. They are also infected with cave spiders, which have always really creeped me out for some reason. Getting back on track, quite a few players have questioned why the exposed ores aren't mined out. I've always assumed this was for gameplay purposes. Not only would it be more complicated to code, but getting rid of all valuable resources around mineshafts would make the player actively avoid them. But that's a boring answer, so let's just say the precursors really liked mining for sport. Traveling to Minecraft's remarkably calm seas, ocean ruins have to be the most underrated structures in the entire game, and it's because they're implemented terribly. Not only are they quite rare, but early game players aren't likely to go near them because they'd rather not get killed by the drown at spawn. Once proper tools and armor are acquired, the loot is completely useless. This is a shame because the ruins themselves are fascinating to me. There's an insane amount of variety, from indiscernible rubble to foreboding towers and small huts to grand arches. Almost every site will be unique. I can't help but wonder what they used to look like. Small villages whose inhabitants will never know, all of their experiences and culture lost to time, leaving nothing but these... Wait, I'm taking this way too seriously. I really shouldn't be writing these scripts at 2 AM. Back on land, trail ruins are a new structure discovered in 1.20. They are ocean ruins but in dirt, and actually offer a reason for players to explore them. You can typically find them in old growth biomes. Coming across the tip of an ancient tower, you can begin gradually excavating it to see what was left behind. The most exciting items hidden here being pottery shards, customizable armor trims, and a new music disc that personally sounds kinda mid, but maybe it'll grow on me. Speaking of my opinions, it'd be really cool if you helped me reach 100,000 subscribers and leave a like on this video. Anyways, once you've gone through and dug out the entire structure, you can find the central tower, its side buildings, houses along the cobblestone path, and whatever this is. I'm excited that these are being added, because while there's always been clear remnants of some previous civilization, they've been in deserts, jungles, or some other inhospitable location you wouldn't expect someone to live. Having these in forest and taigas gives a lot more depth to this past world Mojang is trying to create. Now that we've explored the overworld's land and sea, it would be a shame not to discuss my favorite dimension and its possible implications for Minecraft's lore, the Nether. After exploring around for a bit, you've certainly come across these decaying nether portals. The first thing you'll notice is the dimensional leaking that has spread netherrack and lava into their surroundings, rooting itself into the ground. If a portal is open long enough, does this naturally happen? Or was it a byproduct of something more sinister? Going through the portal, there are only two unique structures here, but they are both significant. Nether fortresses tower over the endless lava oceans. There are a sprawl of nether bricks consisting of bridges, staircases, and rooms housing blazes. While certain sections have been destroyed, these are remarkably intact. Perhaps the wither skeletons somehow maintain them. This contrasts heavily with the Bastion remnants, massive castles filled to the brim with hostile piglin that won't take kindly to your plundering. These buildings are notably decrepit and look as if they're barely being held together, while sprawling tunnels have been mined into the structure itself. If an OSHA inspector ever saw this, they'd be furious. Wait, is my audience even old enough to understand that? And regardless, there are some interesting interactions between these polar opposites. Most notably that wither skeletons attack not only the player, but also piglins that wander into their territory. They don't attack any other nether mobs, which could show animosity between them. But what are these two structures? How do they end up the way they are? For bastions, it's pretty easy. When you first enter one, you'll get an achievement labeled, "Those were the days." And considering these are specifically called remnants, it's clear that the piglin used to be a far more powerful race. Now for the fortresses, it gets a lot more complicated, but there are a few subtle hints that give me an idea of what these were used for. They likely were built by the overworld civilizations, as piglins don't use nether bricks. And according to Duncan Gear, a writer for Minecraft.net, blazes are sentient flames created by the original inhabitants. While that might not be canon, it would make sense for the blaze and magma cube to be a living representation of fire and lava. For the skeleton, the essence of the wither seems to have necromantic powers, so these could be the reanimated remains of ancient guards who would not be happy with piglin trying to pillage their fortresses. However, the entire topic over the wither goes far deeper than this, and should be its own video entirely. Everything considered, these fortresses could be what's left of a precursor mission inside the Nether, to try and discover the secret forces at play here. Once you've gathered a few blaze rods and have traded enough gold with the piglins to receive ender pearls, you can finally make your way to the end. Once crafted, the Eyes of Ender will guide you to a nearby stronghold. Back when they were added in 1.0, these were by far the most intriguing structures in the entire game. Why is it so deep underground? Why was it built? Who was even trying to create this portal? And what were their intentions? There's a lot you could speculate about, but it is challenging to come up with a definitive answer. Regardless, while in game, I've always found it so much fun to explore strongholds. The mystery, all the different variations in rooms and hallways, and the hissing from silverfish that can quickly overwhelm an underprepared player. Anyone that accidentally found one by mining would feel like they just stumbled upon something important, because it was. Once you've placed ender eyes in each frame of the portal, it will light up with a roar, and the battle to free the end would soon begin. This section will be different in that there's been an aspect of the end that's been totally lost in the community for years, and that's how incredibly, almost painfully meta it was. Rolling the clock back to Minecraft Beta, the game had no lore, no structures, these don't count, and no quest, these don't count either. However, as the game got increasingly popular and reached a wider audience, it started to become an expectation that Minecraft had to have a story. Notch wasn't necessarily against this, but he seemed hellbent on designing the entire experience to be erratic, inconsequential, and ultimately meaningless. The end is the end of the game. Before 1.9, there was nothing but the infinite void past the central island. Not because it was trillions of years into the future, or in some corrupted version of the overworld. There were no lore implications. It was just the end of the game, the last thing offered to the player. Endermen were designed and named after Slenderman, a creepypasta that was popular at the time, and having a dragon for the final boss fight is pretty much the most generic choice imaginable. There's also been a lot of speculation over what the achievement "Free the End" means. This seems to be interpreted as freeing the Enderman from the dragon, but I believe it's referring to the player. You are freeing the end for yourself, finally able to jump through the return portal and watch the credits roll. Oh, and that cryptic end poem? Notch simply asked writers to come up with a silly, over-the-top, out-of-nowhere text. If you've ever read through the entire poem, it's precisely that. The strongholds and fortresses, the endermen and blazes, none of this makes sense because it was never meant to. All the structures exist to provide the player with something, and the ones that don't are forgotten about or ignored. Despite this, you can still tie everything together if you really want. You can try to explain the origin of Orc Forest and the Nether, or discover what fate befell the ancient city's dwellers. But you can also wholly disregard any meaning any of this could have, and take it all at face value. Minecraft never forces you to uncover its secrets, and I hope it stays that way. Mojang has been slowly unveiling a world in a state of decay and ruin, one where eons have already passed, with countless stories that will never be retold, with bits and pieces lurking around in the background, able to go unnoticed for years. This is lore that you, as the player, have no hope of fully understanding. There is no other game I've played that can make you feel so powerful and free, despite being so much smaller and unimportant compared to everything around you. And ultimately, that's why I consider Minecraft's environmental storytelling so great. I hope you enjoyed the video, and please let me know if you'd like this kind of content. And if you want to watch another story-based video, consider checking out how I joined a communist country in Minecraft. Finally, I would like to thank my Patreon supporters, Trash Never Dies, Autumn, MKJ, QuarkFox, Aquatic Nacho, Gobi Bago, Feather, and Kai the Fox. The link to my Patreon can be found below.